Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. I know, according to Bob Woodward's new book, and by the way, I don't take Bob Woodward at face value. He is not this paragon of truth that the D.C. press corps makes him out to be, but we'll get to that a little bit later.
Watergate hero.
The in his new book, he suggests that Joe Biden not particularly happy with Bibi's prosecution of the war against radical Islamic terrorism in the region, allegedly called him a effing bad guy, and argued with him about his response to the October 7th terrorist attack by Hamas, which we just memorialized a few days ago. I think Bibi is actually prosecuting this war and communicating about its prosecution quite effectively, and almost Churchillian. Maybe some people wouldn't take it that far, but his speech to Congress provided the moral clarity in a Churchillian way. And I thought his latest video that he posted with a message specific to the Iranian people was a brain stroke as well. Take a listen.
I speak a lot about the leaders of Iran. Yet at this pivotal moment, I want to address you, the people of Iran. I want to do so directly, without filters, without middlemen. Every day, you see a regime that subjugates you make fiery speeches about defending Lebanon, defending Gaza. Yet every day, that regime plunges our region deeper into darkness and deeper into war. Every day, their puppets are eliminated. Ask Muhammad Def. Ask Nasrallah. There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There's nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss. The vast majority of Iranians know their regime doesn't care a whit about them. If it did care, if it cared about you, it would stop wasting billions of dollars on futile wars across the Middle East. It would start improving your lives. Imagine if all the vast money the regime wasted on nuclear weapons and foreign wars were invested in your children's education and improving your health care, in building your nation's infrastructure, water, sewage, all the other things that you need. Imagine that. But you know one simple...
It's a reminder to the intemperate in the West that the hate, it goes in one direction, from jihadists towards Jews, not the other way. And certainly not with respect to the otherwise peaceful Iranian people or people in any other part of the region. That was evidenced by the efforts that were made under Trump to negotiate those Abraham Accords, to strengthen the ties between the Jewish state and Arab states. But I guess this is sort of lost in the middling of the morality of the issue in advance of electoral politics, the left's electoral politics in places like America. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined again by Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spiked, author of the recently released A Heretic's Manifesto, Essays on the Unsayable. Brendan, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I know you wrote a piece about this on the occasion of October 7th. Your reaction to Bibi's direct appeal to the Iranian people.
I think I agree with you that Netanyahu is executing this war well, this war that is being now fought on many fronts, against Hezbollah, against Hamas, against the threat posed by the theocratic regime in Iran. I think he's doing an excellent job. And the most important thing, I think, about Netanyahu is that he understands what is at stake, not only territorially for Israel, and there's a huge amount at stake for Israel, of course, but for the world more broadly, especially for the Western world. He understands that what is being fought in the Middle East at the moment is not only a war between Israel and its radical Islamist enemies, but it's a war between civilization and barbarism. It's a war between the values and virtues of a democratic society, as represented by Israel, and the barbarism of movements like Hamas and Hezbollah, which wish to kill Jews and subject all men and women to their unforgiving religious diktat. That is really what is at stake here. And that the fact that so few in the West appreciate that, and actually that many in the West are taking the wrong side, are taking the side of barbarism, is deeply concerning.
You know, the other thing that speaks to that the sort of domestic political prism through which this is being viewed, particularly by the left, is the position those same people take with Ukraine. We're going to support Ukraine because they were invaded. Russia is the bad actor here. And in terms of a ceasefire or any sort of cessation of hostilities, negotiated cessation of hostilities, well, that's up to the Ukrainians. But with respect to Israel, they want it not to be up to Israel.
Yeah, absolutely right. So much cant and hypocrisy from these people all the time, but especially on this issue in particular. And, you know, the thing that really shocked me this week on Monday, 7th of October, the first year anniversary of the worst act of anti-Semitic violence since the Holocaust, is that there were many voices in the West, left-wing voices, newspaper people, activists, students at Columbia University, all of whom tried to turn Monday into the anniversary not of the slaughter of the Jews, but the anniversary of the Jewish state's own war against the Palestinian people as they see it. So they even hijacked the anniversary. They even hijacked Jewish people around the world grieving for the loss of 1,200 of their co-religionists in that pogrom a year ago. They even hijacked that to push their boring, hysterical agenda, which is one of absolute boiling animus towards the world's only Jewish nation. So they won't even let Jews grieve in peace. They won't even let them have 24 hours. They won't even let them have one measly day in which to commemorate the dead and the lost of 7th of October. It was so sick and so sinister, and it really pointed to what is going on here, which is not just that these people in the West, in our universities and our institutions and the media classes, not only that they've read this conflict wrong, but that they are actually demonstrating their own hostility towards the values of civilization. They are demonstrating just how far they have strayed from the path of reason and the path of enlightenment, that they can look at a war like this and take the side of the Jew haters and take the side of the modern day fascists. And you find yourself wondering, what side would these people have taken in 1939? And it doesn't bear thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, and for some of these individuals, including the current and former students in Ivy League schools, we don't have to wonder. Kamani James, who is the leader of the pro-Hamas campus movement at Columbia, and was suspended ultimately, but not, as a last resort by the administration. They tried everything they could to, not discipline him, but ultimately was suspended. He used the occasion of October 7th this week to tweet, "I will not allow anyone to shame me for my politics. Anything I said, I meant it." And what he said is, Zionists don't deserve to live comfortably, let alone Zionists don't deserve to live.
Yeah, this is what we're up against. And in fact, you were very kind to mention my book, A Heretic's Manifesto, but I have a new book out, which was published a couple of weeks ago, called After the Pogrom, 7th of October, Israel and the Crisis of Civilization. And in that book, I look at precisely this problem. I look at the response in the West to the pogrom of 7th of October, to the vile acts carried out by Hamas. And I really trace in detail how students responded, how activists responded. I remind readers that people in London and New York and Sydney and Berlin, they celebrated the pogrom. So on the streets of London on the 9th of October, outside the Israeli embassy, there was a supposed protest against Israel, even though Israel hadn't really done anything by that stage, which was actually a celebration. They played loud pop music, they were dancing in the streets, they were letting off fireworks. This was a pro-pogrom celebration in the streets of London in 2023, just less than 2 days after Hamas killed 1,200 Jews. And I make the point in my new book that if people in London had poured onto the streets to celebrate Kristallnacht, to celebrate the massacres of Jews in the 1930s and the 1940s, we would remember that. So we should remember that they poured onto the streets to celebrate the 7th of October. And university campuses have been the worst, especially, as you say, the Ivy League schools, and also the top universities in Britain have been very similar. They are overrun with apologists for Hamas. They are overrun with people who will openly say that Zionists don't deserve to live. And what do they mean by Zionists? Who are Zionists? Zionists are Jewish people. A majority of Jewish people have a large majority have Zionist beliefs, believe in the Jewish homeland, believe that they deserve their own homeland, as does every other people on earth. Zionists are Jews. And when I see people saying death to Zionists or Zionists off our campus, or as they did in New York not so long ago, they went on the subway and said, "Are there any Zionists here? Raise your hand if you're a Zionist." I only hear the word Jew.
Yeah.
What they're saying is, raise your hand if you're a Jew. Get off our campus if you're a Jew. Jews don't deserve to live. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, it's sickening what's going on. Now, the October 7th attacks, do you think they would have happened if Trump was president at the time?
It's such a good question, and I have thought about that. And I'm not sure they would have. It's hard to say, isn't it? Because Hamas are a bunch of lunatics, and we don't really know what they might do from one day to the next. So it's difficult to tell. But what is unarguable is that all the things that Biden and his supporters said when he was running for office 3.5 years ago is that he would make the world a safer place, and he would stop war, and he would stop all the chaos of the Trump years, the new fascism that Trump supposedly represents. Biden would finally restore sanity to America and peace to the world. Complete nonsense. The precise opposite has happened. War has shot up around the world. Death and destruction are happening far more than they did during Trump's tenure. Biden has, probably because he's so out of it and doesn't really know what's going on, and is one of the most incompetent leaders America has ever had. As a consequence of that, the world has slightly spun out of control. I think if Trump were in power, things would definitely be different. Whether that would mean that Hamas would have held back from doing what it did, that's hard to tell. But I do think the world would probably be a better place right now if we had a President Trump rather than a President Biden.
I don't know if you saw this, but the interview that Ta-Nehisi Coates gave to CBS Mornings. Ta-Nehisi Coates has a new book called The Message, which I don't recommend. In it, the part where he tackles Israel and the Middle East. On the last day of my trip to Palestine, I visited Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. Well, there's no place called Palestine. That's in Jerusalem, in Israel. So that gives you a little indication of where Ta-Nehisi Coates is coming from. He's a pretty virulent anti-Semite. Anyway, on that show, we played it here after it occurred. We don't need to revisit it other than to characterize it. One of the hosts of the show, a guy on the show named Tony Dokapil, who is Jewish, challenged Coates' characterization of the conflict. And he basically said, for example, the line that I just read from his book sort of indicates that you don't believe Israel has a right to exist. And it was a conversation or a question that was certainly based on the evidence, based on Ta-Nehisi Coates' own words. And Dokapil was disciplined by CBS News bosses for not being properly respectful of Coates because there was a revolt among the staffers, basically, it's how I understand it, at CBS News. I mean, so now you're talking about one of the major corporate outlets in the West, and this is how, forget even airing Coates's claptrap. you can't even ask a question about somebody that they have elevated to, deity status within their religion of identity politics.
Yeah, this treatment of Ta-Nehisi Coates as some kind of saintly figure, some kind of almost messianic style figure who has come to, I don't know, deliver white people from their feelings of guilt, or to open white eyes to the crimes of history, or whatever he thinks he's doing, and all his writing of the past few years. I find it so creepy and weird. And it's like a secular religion. There's a religiosity around him given to him by the establishment and by the corporate media in particular. And, he plays such a fascinating role, Coates, in modern American letters, because if you ever look at the audience who turn up to listen to him, or I'm sure the people who buy his books but probably never read them, I mean, they are predominantly well-to-do white people. And he has this very strange symbiotic relationship between his writing and his views and his arguments and these fashionably guilt-ridden upper-class whites who love being told, how horrible their ancestors were and how horrible American history is and how it was born from the sin of slavery and so on. They love to hear all that. It's almost like a sadomasochistic relationship between Coates and his readership, his largely white readership. And I always want to say to these upper class whites, listen, a sex worker would abuse you for less money. You don't have to keep pumping money into buying all these books and attending all these festivals that Coates speaks at. But it doesn't surprise me one iota that Coates has now landed on the issue of Israel, because that has become the latest hot button issue for these virtue signaling classes. Increasingly, if you want access to the upper echelons of society, if you want to be part of the dinner party set, you have to wear a keffiyeh, you have to declare your pronouns, you have to hate Israel, you have to pity Palestine or pity Palestinians. These are absolutely requisite views that you must hold. These are the new luxury beliefs of the luxury class. And he's now landed on this issue and is dealing with it in the most infantile, cack-handed way, in this morally binary way where everything is black and white, and he has no understanding of the history of Israel or the truth about Israel. He's just pumping out more nonsense, more BS, and of course his upper-class readership are lapping it up, as they always do.
Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer, that is, at Spiked. The author of the book, A Heretic's Manifesto, Essays on the Unsayable, and, as he was mentioning, his new book, After the Pogrom. Brendan O'Neill, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our, turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
There is a place in northern Illinois that people have come from all around the globe seeking treasure.
It's amazing. I didn't know what to expect, but when I got there, I was surrounded by all kinds of gold and silver.
An actual place where you're surrounded by treasure?
I've known that gold and silver were a good investment, but I really didn't want to buy it through the mail. At Fox Valley Coins, I basically walked in, picked out what I wanted, paid cash, and walked out with gold and silver.
Walk in with paper and walk out with actual gold and